Hi, it's time for a music and sound video. This is a music and sound model 330 radio intercom master station. This was sent in by a fellow named Maxton. He lives in South Carolina. His particular unit was made in June of 1983. This model originally looks like it came out probably around 1977 or 1978. And it's a very traditional AM/FM radio with room-to-room intercom master station. He sent it in specifically because it had a broken dial cord on the tuning dial. And we have another video, which I'll link in up here, that shows how I replaced that. And while it was here, he decided because of its age, it would be a good time to have it rebuilt a little bit, clean it all up, so he can get another 30, 40 years of use out of it. So this is going to be just sort of a brief overview of the master station and things to watch out for if you work on one of these. Down here we have the AM/FM tuning dial. One of the nice features on this, which I like, is down here it has a little tuning strength meter. It goes from 1 to 5. 5 is way over on the right hand side where it's kind of hard to see. So as you tune in your stations, the needle will deflect and you can see and hone in the station right at the strongest peak so you can get the best reception that you can. Down here you have radio volume on and off. So this type of design seems to be that as long as it's powered up, the intercom will work, and then you can deliberately turn the radio on and adjust the radio volume, or have the radio turned off if you don't want to listen to it. You have speaker volume here, which is the volume for the speaker in the master station. This is the radio tuning dial, and as you turn this, you can watch the pointer move. I have to tip it up, otherwise the tuning drum rubs on the mat. And when the dial cord was replaced, the pointer was put back onto the dial cord, and I aligned it so it matches with the radio station that shows on the tuning scale. So that's all been taken care of. Down here you have bass and treble adjustment. You have intercom volume adjustment here. And then you have your input selector. You have AM and FM built in, and then there are 2 auxiliary jacks on the back, which are for phonograph or tape players. These are your intercom buttons here. The labeling for these is covered up by these white labels that the owner put on, and I'm not going to take those off. It's a very simple operation for the intercom. It works like walkie-talkies. One person pushes and talks and then releases the button, and the other person pushes their button to reply. So it takes 2 people to operate the intercom. So basically it's push to talk, and then the other person pushes their button to answer back. This button is for the door station, so to talk to the front door, you push this down and hold it, and then you push this button to talk, and I think this button to hear the reply, or perhaps the door station has its own push to talk button on it. I'm not absolutely clear about that because I can't find the last page of the copy of the owner's manual I have for this model is missing, and that's where it shows that. So I'm not exactly sure. I think there is a talk switch on the door station based on the schematic. And then here you have your room control switches. It's 1 through 5 and 6 through 10, and each switch has 3 positions. When it's in the bottom position, it turns on that station, so you have both radio and intercom. If you move it to the center, it turns that station off, and if you put it up at the top, it's now in monitor position, so it's listening into the sounds in that room, kind of like a baby monitor, and you would hear those sounds through all of the other stations in the house that are in the on position. For most people, it's always left on. It's a nice looking unit. It has a nicer than average faceplate, I think. You know, the base plastic is this brownish color here, but then you have these inserts here with this sort of faux burled walnutty kind of look, and it's very glossy, and all the lettering and everything is in gold, and the lettering is actually under the clear plastic part of this, so it's well protected. Same thing with the tuning dial here. One of the other nice features on this is it has 2 red LEDs to indicate which band you're on. You have AM and FM, and when you move the input selector switch here, if we move it to FM, the bottom light comes on. If we move it to AM, the top light comes on. It's just a nice little extra feature. They didn't have to do that. It's just like the tuning strength meter here. They didn't have to do that, but they were trying to make it a little better than average when they designed it. And we can actually turn this on. I've got it sort of set up here. Power that on. And if we turn the radio on.
Build hits 96. Votes 10.
So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this. I've got the power shut off to it. Disconnect this. And we're going to turn it around and look at the back. Because there's some moderately interesting things on here. So it turns out it's a very, very simple design. It's very well made. It has a very heavy metal chassis, and it's sort of a two-layer chassis. There's this part down here, which goes the full size of it, and that's screwed to the back of the plastic faceplate. And then there's this, what I would call, upper chassis here that has the circuit boards, the terminal block on it. It's a very well constructed. Music and Sound seem to really overbuild the chassis and things of their models. As for the electronics, not as fancy. It's only a two-board design. Here you have what would be the main board, and this board contains almost everything. It's got the fundamental power supply, it's got the amplifier, it's got the circuitry to control the intercom functions, you have your auxiliary inputs here. It's really sort of a one-board solution. And then here we have our AM/FM tuner. It's a very conventional AM/FM tuner design from the mid or late 70s. It's like most radios. In fact, in some ways, if you changed out this giant variable condenser for a little miniature size one, you could build this into a pocket transistor radio without really much of a problem. It's very similar to that. It's nothing cutting edge here. Now, this set was designed in probably 76 or 77. The tuner board, I don't think was designed by Music and Sound. I have a feeling it came from a supplier that designed and manufactured tuner boards. And the reason I think that is because when you compare this board to this board, on the top sides of the boards, they look very similar. They're your sort of basic buff-colored phenolic circuit boards. There's no labeling on the boards, but on the underside of this board, there is what's called solder mask. Solder mask is a coating that's put around the traces where the components are soldered in place. I'm not going to take it apart and show you. I've showed it on other ones. In fact, I can show you on this. This is a circuit board, the NuTone Chime module. And on this side, you see it's green. And the green, all the green is the solder mask, and it covers up the copper traces, and it exposes the little pads where the solder is flowed onto it when it's wave soldered to solder all the components onto the board. This tuner board has the same type of solder mask that this does. So that's another step in the process of manufacturing the board. When you compare that to this board, no solder mask on the other side. And again, I'm not taking it off to show you. It's a plain, what would be called a tin plated board. It's all of the copper traces, but without the green solder mask on it. So when it was wave soldered to solder all the components onto it, all of the traces, all of the copper lines that you see snaking all over the boards, plus all the round solder pads, they all have solder on them. There's no solder mask. I have a feeling that this board was made for Music and Sound. It was their design, and this board was a board that they purchased from a vendor that made tuner boards. One of the things that's interesting, and I hadn't thought about that for a while as I begun to work on this, because both of these boards were rebuilt for age-related issues. Neither one of these boards have any component designations on them. So again, we'll go back to the Chime module board here. If you look on this board, you can see there's writing and lettering and component numbers all over the board. For instance, these two right here says Q1 and Q2, and there's a little symbol on the board underneath. These are transistors, and there's little symbols underneath it that show you it's a transistor, and it shows you which way around the transistor goes. Same thing for, let's see if I can find a good example here. It's hard to see on this one, but right here, this little red jobby, that's a diode. And diodes have polarity. They have a plus side and a minus side basically. Underneath it, it is called out as the diode. Can't tell what the number is because it's underneath the diode itself, I have a feeling, or it's missing, I'm not sure. Anyway, it shows which way around it goes when you insert it into the holes on the board. It's like a legend. It's silk screened. It's another step in manufacturing of a circuit board. Neither one of these boards have any component designations or any silk screening on it to tell you which way around things go. And for instance, when I rebuilt this board, you can see all these capacitors that were replaced. There's one here and then all of these blue ones, and there's a few little black ones too. Capacitors like these, they have a polarity. This is the minus side of this one, and this is the plus side of this one, and it's got to go on the board the right way around, because if you don't, when you power it up, it'll explode. When you work on a board like this, and you don't see boards like this that much, almost all the boards we work on have component designations, you have to be very careful that you don't get mixed up when you're changing out parts and put things in backwards. So what I do on a board like this is, if you look really carefully, you might notice like right here and right there and right here and right here and next to it, there's all these little red dots on the board. And the red dots were put there by me. I just simply use a fine point red Sharpie. I put the red dots on the positive side of each component so I wouldn't forget which way around it goes. And that can be a real trap if you don't do this all the time, because you take a component off, you get ready to put on the new one, the phone rings or the dog barks or the baby cries, and you go to see what's happening, and then you come back 10 minutes later and it's like, which way did it go? And there's no marking on the board to help you. And then what you have to do is turn the board over, look at the circuit and see how things are connected up and reason out which way it goes around. I can do that because I have done it for a long time, but if you're a novice, it's not a good trap to get into. So you got to be careful. This is kind of old school in design, and as much as I hate to do comparisons between music and sound and NuTone, you can go all the way back to the late 50s, early 60s, and NuTone boards had component designations on them. And if you get into boards that were made starting around, I think it was probably 1973, they all have solder masks. They were a more professionally made board than these are. This is a very simple design. There's nothing wrong with it. It actually sounds really good for its day. It's just surprising to see that must be lower production. We have to save costs a little bit. I think maybe they spent more money on the metal chassis than they did on the circuit boards. I don't know. But it's a pretty simple design. All in one board here with virtually everything on it, and then a tuner board here, little terminal board here. This is a 4-wire system, as most music and sound models are, and it's a very simple little terminal board here. You have your music and sound 4-conductor cable. That cable will contain the colors white, red, black, and green. So the green wires go on each one of the screws, and then all of the white wires get bundled together in this terminal post. All the red wires get bundled here under the red post, and all the black wires go here on the black post. The exception to that is on the door speaker, because it has its own intercom button on the front, and this blue wire is the door speaker connection. And I'm going to set this down like this, because actually, untangle this here. This cover, I haven't put this on because I wanted to show you all of this. This cover actually goes on like this. And this orange wire and the blue wire, the orange wire is the antenna and the blue wire is for the door speaker. They get soldered back onto this terminal strip down in here. But I took this off so I could work on it, and I wanted to leave it off, otherwise you really can't see very much. Also, when this is in place, which is this way, it covers up the tuning drum on the condenser here to protect it. It covers over the boards for the most part, and they were nice enough to give you cutouts in here which line up with the adjustments on the tuner that may need to be made that are covered over by this, so you could actually align it with the cover in place. I'm not sure whether or not this was added on here for any amount of shielding for the tuner. I think probably not. Probably was just to protect the circuit boards from over-ambitious installers who are trying to cram it in the wall and maybe they crack a board or something like that happens. So I think that's what that's probably all about. But all in all, it's a nice little intercom master station. It has nice quality sound, and the intercom functions are basic but not uncommon for those days. So that's a quick look at a Music and Sound Model 330 master station. This was also apparently available in a version which was the Model 333, which had a 3-note built-in electronic door chime, and then there was also a Model 338 which had an 8-note electronic door chime built in standard. I'm not sure where that board or boards would have gone exactly. They fit in here somewhere, and I have a feeling it probably fits over this area over the back of the speaker or something like that, because there's not a lot of room over here. I'm not sure exactly where. There's no plug like to plug it in, because it wasn't an optional like module that you could buy later on and put it in. It was built into the set when the set was manufactured, so it probably was hardwired in some way. I didn't really spend any time looking into that because it doesn't really apply to what I'm doing with this. Anyway, that's it. It's just a nice, interesting music and sound model from the late 70s and early 80s. I hope you found this interesting, and perhaps for someone it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that will help us a lot. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.